Hi, I'm Ted Dixon, Vice President, Partner Accounts at Acxiom. I'm here in Cannes with our friends from LinkedIn and a stellar panel to discuss their research into the increasingly important world of B2B marketing. Kristin, the majority of marketing leaders saw their budgets increase last year, and over 2/3 expect an increase this year as well. What do you think is driving these budget increases?
I think there is a net new budget coming in, particularly around e-commerce and taking advantage of the increased digitization of marketing. But I also think there's a shift in budgets. Marketing leaders are now owning that entire customer journey, from the sort of bookends of brand through to lead gen, nurture, retention, loyalty. So there's a consolidation of budgets that used to be in different teams coming in under the CMO. We're also seeing a shift away from sales budgets into marketing budgets. As that customer goes online into a self-serve journey, that's a marketing space, right? That's a marketing space in terms of communicating, finding those audiences online, communicating in that way. So shifting from sales, consolidation in there, and net new opportunities with new sales models and business models.
Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we've seen a similar shift, and the shift is really, for us, probably more from the consumer side of the business into the B2B side of the business, as we've put a little more emphasis there. And similarly to what Kristin was talking about, we've seen the shift from sales into marketing as more and more people are converting for us online and directly with our sites versus necessarily through a sales team.
Deirdre?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the other thing is also looking at the whole account, doing more account-based marketing and really considering the lifetime value of the account as opposed to just the lead generation and the value of that immediate sale.
As we all know, with great budget comes great responsibility. Nearly half of respondents say they're under pressure to prove ROI in a shorter time. How can marketers gain more confidence in their ability to drive revenue and prove the results? Michael?
Yeah, we've definitely seen our budgets move down the funnel and much more performance focused over the last few years. But we had a perfect storm this last year to some extent. Our brand marketing went completely away across the consumer and commercial business. So we were able to measure the impact that those brand dollars would have had on our performance marketing from an efficiency standpoint there, but also the metrics that we saw degrade on the brand side. And it gave us the ability to work with our research partners to go back to our executive leadership team and explain the actual impact it had on the bottom line by not having those brand dollars in market.
Were there folks within your organization who objected to the change in, if you will, strategy and tactics?
Oh yeah, I think we've had a lot of discourse about what the strategy should be and where the dollars should be in the funnel. And there was so much pressure from finance for a long time to be revenue focused and make sure we're making an impact on the bottom line that those dollars did move that way. But I think that at the end of the day, as we were able to kind of tell the story and the narrative of what we actually saw in the data, it's helped us to move back up the funnel.
I think it leads into a good point, which is in measurement, the challenge is rarely the tool. The tools have been around for a while, right? Data orchestration, data integration is a big opportunity. But I think organizational structure, organizational culture, is the whole organization lined up behind the same KPI? Or are there silos? Are people being KPI'd on a site visit from one vehicle versus the overall business growth? And I think that's what Michael's talking about there in terms of when the organization can all get behind one goal or the proxies towards that one goal, you're more likely to be able to use the available tools in the right way.
And what's exciting about Michael's example is you rarely get a test case this pure. Do you know what I mean? We conjecture, we suppose, and sometimes you might take a little bit of budget out of this or it's incremental here, but to actually see a complete drop off and be able to map the actual effect is very exciting. And I'm sure as a marketer, it was really exciting. It was scary, but I'm sure it was hugely exciting for you guys as an organization because you got learnings that you might not have ever been able to get in any
Silver
other way.
lining in the storm.
Totally, and it did require a lot of what you're talking about. It required the silos to be broken down and for us to work cross-functionally against disciplines to make sure that we measured it in the right way to be able to get the data back to go tell the story. So that was really important and good learning for us going forward as well of this is how we should always operate, and it kind of forced us to do it.
And I'm sure it also led to the orchestration of how you started ingesting, you started putting budget back in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
But it's hard, it's easy to buy a tool. Yeah. It's much harder to get an entire organization pulling in the same direction.
The majority of marketers surveyed are looking to improve their measurement tools and become more data-driven. What advice can you give them, Deirdre?
Well, I think a lot of it is what we talked about in terms of breaking down organizational silos, but data is important and measurement is important. I think having a proper measurement framework so that you know what you're measuring, why you're measuring it, when you're going to use it. So there's some short-term measurement, like for campaign optimization. Then there's campaign outcomes. Then there's brand outcomes, and then there's business outcomes. And it's really being able to create that framework, as Kristin and Michael were talking about, as an organization so that you have everybody pulling the right levers for whichever metric you're trying to shift. Because obviously we all want business outcomes, but we can often only see campaign effects. And so it's really creating those proxies, it's really creating a sophisticated strategy towards measurement. And then, as Kristin said, finding the tools. We have tools everywhere. We have tools that will enable everything.
And I think one of the key challenges in B2B that we're all aware of is the length of the journey, right? Everything from 2 weeks to 2 years. And the multiplicity of the data sources. So you've got offline data, online data, site data, so the data orchestration and the democratization of data. Who can access that data? Who in the marketing department is able to understand the impact and use that data? So again, it's not the tool, it's how you use it. It's not the data, it's how you orchestrate that and how you make it available to people in the organization so that they can all drive in the same direction.
There's an interesting statistic from the study. 60% of marketers are looking to become more data-driven and improve measurement. That means that they say that they want to become more data-driven. What are the biggest challenges they have? That's the first part of the question. The second part is, in terms of finding those resources, right, those analytic chops, so to speak, to help understand what data should be used and how that data should be activated and targeted and analyzed, et cetera. Where are you finding those sources within your organizations?
I think for us, it goes back to a little bit what we were talking about on the democratization of the data. And we've really worked hard organizationally to centralize not only like media buying, but also research and insights and the data lake as well, so that everybody has access to the same data. And we work on a methodology to make sure that the methodology is the same. I think in the past, we had a lot of challenges because every group kind of did it their own way. And it's hard to look left to right because it's not apples to apples. And we've really done a lot of work to centralize most of those functions to keep that kind of consistent framework.
Yeah. And here's your AI bingo card for the for Carr, is that we need people right now who know Python, who know coding. AI is going to remove the need for those kind of skills, or reduce the need for those kind of skills. So if the data's in there, again orchestrated, that people can go in, then it becomes a understanding of insights and visualization and how you're telling the story.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. I think we are going to move. Data analysts, I think, will always be important, be they mechanical or human. Yeah. But I think that we oftentimes go too far down just what the data is telling you, as opposed to thinking, what is the story I can tell with this data? And so I think it's going to come down to people with curiosity and people who are good brand storytellers. Yeah. And they're the ones who are going to be able to make the best use of all of this data in order to really connect with consumers. Yeah. As Kristin said, the shape of the B2B consumer has changed so much. It is large enterprises, but large enterprises don't buy in the same cycles or in the same ways they did a decade or 2 decades ago. And then you have this huge rise of small to medium enterprises who behave much more like consumers and are much more in the digital space and are looking for something different. They're looking, yes, for a functional machine, but they're also looking for a brand that they can stand behind.
Yeah.
We can see in this study that marketing leaders, especially CMOs, are devoting more energy to demonstrating B2B marketing impact. They're also looking to improve their soft skills and upskill their teams. What next steps should CMOs be taking as their role in the business expands? Michael?
Yeah, I think we focus a lot on making sure the team is really ingrained in the business and how we make money and what is the sales cycle and how does the sales team also sell it, because that will make us better marketers at the end of the day and be able to go build media plans and marketing programs that will actually impact that bottom line. So I think the soft skill really becomes around the storytelling and the ability to go explain to executives why we're making the decision we're making in media and distill some of the complex into regular terms to make sure that the story comes across of why we're doing what we're doing.
And I think from the agency world, we go through the same, because a lot of the people who are working in digital media, like programmatic, for example, actually don't come from a marketing background. They come from a technology background. And so ensuring that they have access to our CSO, ensuring that they understand full funnel marketing, lifetime value. We think they've got a lot of acronyms, so do we. Yeah. And so it's kind of that cross-training, because that's how you're going to get that curiosity, and that's how you're going to get those great ideas. And oftentimes it can be easy to forget that, because they're the most sophisticated with data, and so people often leave them behind because they're like, well, the data's the new thing, and they've got that down pat. So what do I have to teach them? Well, actually, the skill of marketing.
Yeah, I think we're seeing an increase in the need for SMEs around data, around AI, whatever the case is. And I think from a CMO point of view, in terms of the ideal CMO, I mean, I've been that marketing director who was a great armchair creative director, right? The person you don't want in the TV studio. You can't be an armchair technologist. So we need CMOs now who understand how their money is being spent in a data, tech, and measurement kind of way, so that they can bring real value. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be the expert on AI, but if they can't talk to that AI person and get everyone behind the goals, then there'll be a challenge, right?
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, we can't overlook DEI as a vital part of the marketing conversation. It's marketing's job both to tell the brand's DEI story, reflect diversity in their creative work, and make sure their own teams are all exemplary with DEI. How do you feel about the current state of DEI? How does it look in your organizations?
I saw the statistic, and it said something like 80% want it and 40% track it, right? Something like that. That's a real disparity that I think I would call out. If you want it, then do something about it, right? As team leaders, you don't need to be the CMO, you don't need to be in the HR department to take degrees off your JDs, to make sure that you're doing diverse panels when you interview, to make sure that if you are bringing people in who don't have the skill set that you're there, or who might look different in some way, or neurodivergent, whatever the case is, that you've set up the structures that make that work for them. I would say don't wait for your organization to do it. You can do it as a hiring manager. Yeah.
100% agree. Not just a hiring manager, but also every individual person should be empowered to be able to bring things to people's attention and say, hey, I think we need a program for this. I think a lot of the almost grassroots things that are happening within all of our organizations that are started by teams who spot a need are fantastic, because they're the ones, it's got to go both ways. But one interesting thing I recently read, and I'm just going to share this because I think it's fascinating, is the 4-day work week. And so I just read a study recently that the 4-day work week is doing more for gender and work balance than anything else, because with that extra day, women are able to do more of the home things that they need to do, and a lot of the emotional labor, or they're expected to. That's absolutely correct. But the interesting thing about it is that with that extra day, men are statistically more likely to pick up a lot of those home economics things. And so I found that really fascinating, because we've been banging our heads against the wall for decades, and we have tried measurement, we have tried standards, and we have tried targets, and we have tried publicly exposing salaries. But with this test on 4-day work week, they're finding that actually this is really helping with the workload balance. And with the workload balance, it's just not a male-female thing, but basically it's when you have a support system that is probably prevalent, where there is a male working in a support system at home and a support system at work, it only works for one set of people. And most people aren't in situations like that. And so what I found really fascinating is something I think we need to explore more, is this 4-day work week in the context of DE&I.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think for us, Microsoft DEI is a core value of the company, and very much ingrained in the culture, and it is something that we track and report on from a hiring standpoint and salaries, but I think it goes beyond that, and everybody at the company has to have a DEI core priority, and people on my team, like where we're focused right now, is how do we make media more inclusive, and how do we take bias out of algorithms, and where are there places that we can make an impact on the industry, because there's a lot of work that happens internally, and we definitely need to continue to do that and make sure that we're participating there, but we also have a very large voice in the industry, and how can we affect our partners and make sure that we're working with companies that are finding representation across different cultures and values as well. So I think that's been a really awesome shift over the last probably 3 or 4 years at Microsoft. It's become a massive focus as a culture.
Exactly, because we as marketers, we hold a lot of the purse strings, and so therefore we can enact a lot of change. I just want to bring one more word into the conversation, which is belonging. And so we talk a lot about belonging because you can have DE&I, but if people don't feel that they belong, they won't speak out, they won't start initiatives. So I think we also need to really focus on whether or not people feel they belong.
And I think that the purse strings is a really good call out, because in terms of the money that's coming from clients and how we're choosing to spend it, those are all subjective decisions, right? You know, we pretend there's a level of rationality there, but as we go out, we all have the bias inside us to go to that media partner that we've worked with before or this particular channel. And we're seeing clients more and more expect us at Group M to be looking for what I think we termed a few years ago the new majority, which is very quickly becoming a huge majority in terms of those new media channels. So, you know, clients can drive that, and then media agencies can make sure that they're also looking at the new opportunities out there in that space.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing with our clients as well.
I'm just curious, the 4-day work week, do you think the folks changing the way that they work, so to speak, because of the pandemic, sharing in responsibilities, working, you know, together at home, being forced to do that, has helped to kind of bring forth, if you will, kind of a more willingness to adopt or consider different ways to work?
Working from home initially was, I mean, I'll speak for myself. There was a couple of weeks where everything kind of paused, right? I'm like, if I can't go to the office, how do I do this, right? And then it very quickly became normal to be having these online meetings and be doing work in isolation. And I think we showed people can be just as productive, probably more, happier, on all of those kind of things when they have, I think what it is some self-control over how they run their week. I don't know that it has to be in the office or at home. It has to be a sense of, I've got a lot of things in my week to get done. If I can have some control over that, I'm going to feel, you know, we all like to feel in control of our lives, right? The one thing I will challenge you on, though, is that the work from home for women ended up just being more work for women.
Yes.
So they were doing their homework and teaching 5-year-olds how to read and making sure 16-year-olds got out of bed, and then also doing the work as well.
Completely agreed, which is unfortunately why a lot of women have left the industry. And I was recently on an International Women's Day panel with LinkedIn, actually, and there was a stat that for every one female promoted into leadership, 2 leave. And a lot of it is because of the burden that was uncovered.
I think modeling the behavior is super important as well. We set a lot of boundaries, and we're very flexible at Microsoft. But there's a lot of days where I have to leave at 3 o'clock to get my kids, and that's okay. And I make sure I tell the team that so they see that, and then they feel the ability to do the same in their lives. I think that's really important.
1,000%. The more people we have who are modeling this, particularly men, the more important it is, because then it just normalizes it.
Deirdre, Kristin, Michael, thank you so much for participating in the panel. We learned a lot. Have a great Cannes experience. Thank you to LinkedIn. Have a wonderful day.